I am so full of cold right now. I've been sleep deprived for the last 2 days, but I made a promise to myself that I am going to be more consistent with the uploads. So that means that today I need to work my way through this somehow, somewhere. And you guys are just going to have to forgive me for the way that I look and sound. Hopefully you'll enjoy this video regardless, but I'm getting up right now and I'm going to face this. It's goddamn cold. I feel dreadful. So, we all remember my Rendlesham Forest video, right?
Why are you fucking all hands above your head? Get here!
Well, there's something that's not really ever quite sat right with me about that whole incident. And I've been wanting to make a video about this for quite a while. So, here we are. And I'm going to talk to you about exactly what it is that I found quite weird. Yeah, shortly after I was detained, I had every reason to believe that that footage would never surface ever again. Like the whole 2 days on the run up to me being captured, I thought would be lost forever. I would never get my camera back and I would be ultimately arrested and detained. That is what most people would assume, right? So, as the footage showed quite clearly, there was 6 to 7 troops, uniformed soldiers that surrounded me and ultimately detained me. And I think that the highest ranking soldier that was there at the time, going off the insignia on his uniform, was a sergeant, right?
You filming a documentary. Well, you can't say that. You can't touch my camera. You're not unfucking, you're in MOD property, mate. I can do what the fuck I want.
And these guys roughed me up, rightfully so. I was trespassing, I was doing all the things I shouldn't have been doing. And out of nowhere turns up this other guy who's not in a uniform, in civilian dress. And do you know when you just get the feeling that these people know of him, but don't know him on a personal level? Like when I was in the army, this happened a lot, right? When I was in the army, I'll give you an example. There was one elderly guy, we was out on exercise. I think we'd been out for like 3 weeks. And during the exercise, there was an elderly guy that I saw. And there was something about him that aired confidence, aired respect. He had this aura about him. And even though nobody ever told me who he was at the time, I knew this guy demanded respect. He was someone of a high caliber. That's the impression that I got with this guy in civilian dress, is that these troops, these soldiers who was detaining me, roughing me up, they knew of this guy, just not on a personal level. They knew to respect him, they knew to follow his command, but just not on a personal level. And just to go back to my example, the guy that I saw out on exercise was part of the 22 Airborne Division, which is ultimately the SAS. So, you know, it's kind of the same feeling that I got with this guy. Once I was detained, once I was roughed up, put to the floor, picked back up, had my camera confiscated, this guy in civilian dress turns up, and all of a sudden, he starts calling the shots. And I'm like, who's this guy? But I could sense, and the feeling that I was getting, was that they knew to respect his command and his words. Weird, right? So this is something that I'd never really spoken about before. Obviously to the close individuals that are in my life who've asked me about this situation, maybe I've spoken about it then, but I've never really spoke openly about it here on the channel. And when this guy turned up, there is something else that changed, and that was the whole atmosphere, the mood. I went from being in this panicked state of not knowing what was going to happen to me to almost a sense of calm. Like, this guy was so in control, he was so calm about everything, and even the way that he spoke was controlled. It made me feel at ease. Before that, it was chaos. The troops were shouting, they were being loud and doing everything like I've said they had to do to make sure that I was of no danger. But this guy took over and the atmosphere completely changed. Basically, when he arrived, he came in an unmarked vehicle, whereas the troops before were in a 4x4 military style vehicle. He was in civilian dress. His demeanor was different. He spoke with an air of confidence and control. And whereas the soldiers before were kind of making me believe that I'd messed up big time, like I was in so much trouble, this guy turned up and he never spoke to me directly, ever, not once. He spoke through the soldiers, and while he was stood there, he was saying things like, "Have you searched him?" They said yes. "Have you checked his camera?" They said yes. He said, have you took his details? They said, yes. They said, have you found out where he got in? They said, not yet. He said, okay, give him his camera back, take him back to where he got in, seal up the hole or the gap or wherever he got in, seal it up and let him go. And even at this point, I could tell that the soldiers and the sergeant especially was like, what? We're just going to let him go, give him his camera back? What the hell? And I was as shocked as they was. But this guy was a somebody. He was a somebody. And I have no idea to this day who he was. He wasn't a base commander. He wasn't some kind of officer that I'm aware. I mean, I've met and dealt with many officers in my life. This guy there was something weird about this guy. And I'm not saying that he was some kind of, extraterrestrial, undercover, whatever. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that this guy was a somebody. And I don't believe that those soldiers knew exactly who he was, but they'd been informed that whatever he says goes. And who he was, what his purpose at that base was at that time, I have no idea. But it just goes to show that although that base is unused, derelict, and no longer in service, it actually very much is in service, and it's very much protected by people that have clearly some kind of authority beyond uniformed troops. Now, was he some kind of Men in Black type character? I have no idea, but like I've said, and I will drum this home continually, is that the feeling I got was those troops, including the sergeant, didn't know this guy on a personal level, but they knew of his reputation. They knew to listen to whatever he said, and whatever he said must be the way. Never in a million years did I expect to get my camera back. Never in a million years did I expect to be leaving that camp with no criminal record. And weird. That guy was something else. Also as well, just to add, is that he then sent the soldiers back to camp after they basically took me to where I got in. I showed them. He then sent them back to camp, and then he, in an unmarked vehicle, followed me down the perimeter of the fence. This guy, I would love to know more about him. I would love to know who he was, what his purpose was, what rank he held, because, again, I've dealt with many high-ranking officers in my time during the army, and he was a somebody. So just going back a little bit in this chain of events, there's a part of this whole scenario where you hear the sergeant asking me what I'm doing on MOD property.
What are you doing on here? Whoa.
And you'll hear me say that I'm just making a documentary.
Just filming a documentary.
Which was clearly a lie, right? I wasn't there making a documentary, but it just felt the right thing to say at that time. I thought that that would somehow alleviate the situation a little bit and take the pressure off me. So then that they know I'm not a terrorist, I'm not armed, etc., etc. And I thought that would somehow calm the situation down. And one of the weird questions that came out after that was, what do you know about the Rendlesham incident? And I basically just said what I've seen on TV. I've seen things on documentaries. I've seen interviews from people that supposedly were there over this 2-day period. And that's as much as I know. I have no involvement. I have no relation to anyone or any ties to the events. I'm literally just there to make a documentary. And that was the only thing that they asked regarding anything to do with the UFO situation at Rendlesham. So a few of you might now be wondering if there was ever any follow-up. Like, did some weird characters just arrive in the dead of night, knocking on my door in the early hours of the morning, or anything like that? Now, there wasn't any follow-up, but there was a weird situation, and this came a little while after. I was in a shop. I think I actually made a video about this here on the channel. I was in the shop, and there was a queue of people waiting to be served in front of me. And a guy in front of me turned around and said, "It's Ben, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, do I know you?" He was like, oh, have a think about it. What a weird thing to say, like, have a think about it. And I was like, no, you don't look familiar. Like, I don't think I do know you. He went, just have a think about what you're doing or something like this. This was a while back, but it was a weird situation. The guy never at any point told me who he was, how he knew me, but it was very, very weird. So anyway, so I just assumed that maybe he watches the channel. Maybe he's a subscriber. He said, have a think. And I was like, have a think? Like, this is so weird. Like, why would you just not tell me who you are? Anyway, this guy goes up to the cashier. He gets served. He leaves the shop. And in my mind, I only had 1 or 2 items. I'm thinking I'm gonna race out after this guy and try and figure out who he is, get a conversation started. And maybe he is just a subscriber. Maybe I'll find out. But why won't he tell me who he is? So anyway, I get served. I literally go out of the shop as quick as I can, look around, and he's nowhere to be seen. He's nowhere to be seen. The last thing he said to me was, have a think. And that was a very weird situation. Now, was that linked to anything that unfolded at Rendlesham? I have no idea. I still don't know who this guy is or why he wouldn't open up to how he knew me. But that was the only thing that I can think of that came afterwards in terms of follow-up or some kind of a warning, if you will. Very unusual. Don't know who that was. Don't know why he wouldn't tell me who he was or how he knew me, but that did happen.
They're coming behind me. Yeah, they're driving right behind me up to the perimeter fence. They're literally driving right beside of me right now.
Are they coming down Eastgate?
Yeah, they're coming towards Eastgate now.
Shit, because I'm almost at that car park.